you think that the narrative that we kind of talked about earlier, does that tend to map onto smaller stories in the Bible too? Because we kind of talked about it mapping onto like the grand narrative. So just like as a curiosity, have you looked at like a smaller story and seen a way um, that those two still work in conjunction?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I haven't looked at it as deeply. I think the answer would be yes, because I really believe we are just wired to hear stories this way. That kind of start with how things are. There's that inciting incident. We know pretty early on what success is like, and so I think that the themes and the kind of structure of stories is pretty consistent across all of
Mm,
them. I think one of the things, maybe not exactly what you're asking, Tucker, but I think one of the things that's interesting to me is like the story of David and Goliath. I learned that as a
mm,
kid. I've always thought the story of David and Goliath is for me to be like David and think through what are my five smooth stones and what is that skill that God has given me that I can use and who is my Goliath and how can I defeat my enemy. And I tend to approach like the story of David and Goliath very much about me and what can I learn out of it. Not
mm.
necessarily a bad thing, because I do think there's lots of good examples to live
Sure.
like, live towards, and there's examples to avoid that we see in scripture. But if we look at the big narrative, like why is David in there? Why is he defeating Goliath? And in some ways, we go all the way back to that Abrahamic covenant when one of the promises that God has is through your descendants will come the Messiah. And so, if all of Scripture is looking forward to this Messiah, and this Messiah is going to come through the line of David, what we have in Goliath is not just this giant who's attacking the people of Israel, but the Philistines who are on this centuries long kind of quest to absolutely wipe out Israel, to destroy all of them. And in some ways, it's almost like a scene out of the Terminator. If if they can wipe out the line that the Messiah is going to come from, then the Messiah will never come. And so the Philistines, in many ways, are this embodiment of evil of the satanic plan to just wipe out the seed so the Messiah never comes. And so when we get to David and Goliath, it's not only a story of David's faithfulness, but of God's enduring promise that he will bring the Messiah through the line of Abraham, through the line of David, all the way to the person of Jesus. And so it's not just a story about David and Goliath, but it's a story that shows God's grand plan of redemption, and he will not be thwarted. No matter what comes against it, God's plan will endure. And so even those small stories, I think when we zoom out and look at them in the scheme of the big thing, starts to help us to understand who this God is that we serve and how faithful he is to his promises.